Hello and welcome to my little corner of YouTube. My name is Nia and I am a speculative fiction writer, mostly for dark fantasy and horror from middle grade on up. I have had a few short stories published in the past. I have a couple of novels that I've written, none of them published yet, but I have one that is pretty close to query ready and I'm about to embark on a new adventure with it. So it's like a unique and incredible opportunity that I think could be helpful to you, because when I was in the beginning stages of writing, those adventures were really helpful to me. Ever since I started writing, I have followed different mentorship programs, pitch contests, and thinking that when I had a manuscript that was submission ready, that a mentorship or guide might be something that would be really helpful for me as somebody with a background in teaching and then healthcare and with a teeny tiny micro business. Something like this was completely foreign to me. And I thought something like this would be really helpful for a newbie like myself. So I have had my eye on the We Need Diverse Books mentorships for a few years, and last year I applied. The mentorship pairs unpublished authors with published authors that can serve as a sounding board, as a guide, as somebody that can help you work through and navigate the seas of publishing. And you could probably tell what I'm getting at right now. I was selected as a 2026 We Need Diverse Books mentee. I cannot tell you how shocked I was to get that email. And don't get me wrong, I love my story. I love this manuscript. I love Noelle and all of the characters in it, even when they're being unlovable. But I didn't think that this manuscript was like perfect or, ready to go out. And I think that that's the idea, is getting somebody that can help you get it there. So it was just what I was processing, as well as like a sprinkle of imposter syndrome and a lot of anxiety mixed up in a mentee milkshake of like, what do I do now? And now I really have to see all of this through, if you know what I'm talking about. The manuscript that I submitted is a middle grade story, and the working title is Under. Under is a middle grade dark fantasy about a 13-year-old girl, Noelle, who is adopted and has to choose between living in a broken home and dealing with her very scary shadow magic, or falling under to a world where she can fully live within her shadows, even if it's not exactly as she expected it to be. It's a fantastical world with a tea witch and a ink witch and a sea witch, and it has a dark and imposing shadow forest that is not supposed to be leaking. It is a story with a spunky, kind of mostly lovable main character who really doesn't trust many people and has had such a love for story that you'll be able to find fables throughout. The flavors of the fables will feel very familiar to folks that may have had some Mediterranean, North African, Southwest Asian ancestry, or study in those arena of folk tales. Mullah Nasruddin tales pepper the story, and even if you haven't heard that name, you probably have heard some of those stories before. One not so fun fact about this manuscript, if you have seen my prior videos, you know this already, that this is my Jo March novel, and I call it that because anybody that watched the 90s Little Women with Winona Ryder as Jo March, like I remember watching the part where her younger sister threw the manuscript in the fire and was like, after a standard sibling fight, and I was like just shocked that she would do that, but also remembered thinking like that would never happen because we can save documents now, right? And so then ask me why in 2023 I was crying in the downtown Apple store because there was something going wrong with my screen. The only thing that I could do to fix the computer was a factory reset, and that meant losing every document that I was saving to the desktop and not to the cloud, which was this manuscript. So it's okay. It's all okay. I did not touch it for 2 years. But I did put, I think, everything back into the novel that really needed to stay. And it had time to simmer and really get a better flavor for the manuscript for what it is worth. And now I have had that experience, and now I save everything 4,000 times, and hopefully my struggles will be something else and I don't have to deal with this one again. Lisa Moore Ramee wrote A Good Kind of Trouble. This is such an exceptional book. This is such a good one. I've also read Mapmaker by her, and I'm kind of working through a couple of more at the moment. Lisa is really strong at interiority. When I read her characters, I really feel like I am in their brains. So if you're struggling with people are telling you my characters feel a little distant or I don't identify with the characters, I would say this is a good author study to complete if you're working on improving that. I just really feel like I'm right there with her. The other thing that I like about Lisa's writing is that she lets her characters be flawed in that they are young and expected not to have it all together. And I like a character that can make a bad decision and learn from it. And she has really strong character work there. So definitely check out some of her books. I thought that she was incredibly generous with her time. I think that it's going to be a great partnership. I am really excited for it. And I could not have probably picked out a better mentor just based on the feedback that I got and the plan going forward. Lisa told me that one of the reasons she picked the manuscript was because she liked the premise and she thought the concept was unique and she was drawn into the writing straight away. So I have that going for me, and I feel like I had a little bit of confirmation that the book is getting close to being ready to start querying. The more and more that I learn about publishing, I feel like the less and less that I hear that people are willing to take a chance on a new author and or take a chance on something that needs a big developmental edit or that has a lot of copy edits that need to get done just because of the reductions in traditional publishing, what is happening to all of the people that help to polish your book. So it really has to be sparkly when it is turned in. When we talked, Lisa asked a lot about my writing journey, and I heard some of hers. And many of you probably haven't heard my journey, so here it is in a nutshell. I was not a kid that always knew that I was going to be a writer, nothing like that. I had a really negative, or have a really negative mean girl voice in there that can be loud when it comes to things that are generative and artistic. And so I kind of pushed it to the side until I had kids. So when my kids were like 7 and 4, I started not just reading them stories, but telling them stories. I knew I wanted a home where I could have my kids go to sleep hearing stories. And so my kids are very fun and funny and asked a lot of questions like, what about this? What did this happen? Can you tell me this again? And in crafting those stories over and over and over again, I started thinking that maybe I could put some stories down on paper. So this was 2018. And back when we were doing NaNoWriMo, I knocked out a novel in the 4 weeks. And even though I had done my research and I knew like, you got to polish it, you got to edit it, I still thought, well, now I find a critique group, right? And that's what I do. So I found a local critique group, went in and was absolutely slaughtered by the piranhas there. They ate and left absolutely no crumbs at all. And to be fair, that manuscript was not polished. It was not ready to be shared. It needed a couple of more rounds at least to go before it was kind of introduced into the wild. And I learned a couple of things from that experience. One was the type of critique group that I wanted. I didn't want a big old critique group, and I wanted one that was more centered around kids writing, or around at least the type of writing that I do. So that was a positive experience that came out of that bloodbath. And the other things that I learned for my own writing was that I'm not a clean first drafter, which is okay. Some writers that I know, I don't know if I can believe them that what they turned in. I just turned in the first draft and it has like no grammar errors, nothing like that. Mine definitely are not that clean. The other thing that I have learned is for flow and to catch some of those errors that don't maybe come as easily for me as some other writers. I need to read my stuff out loud before I turn it in. And that tends to be a big part of my editing process, even with this novel that I'm working on, is reading it out loud, which takes hours, but it has helped me catch things that don't make sense. If it doesn't make sense when you say it out loud, I think it's a bigger chance that it doesn't make sense on the page. I did find great critique groups after that, so there is a happy part to the story. I did that first through SCBWI, the Society for the Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. We were a group of 4, all middle grade, and that group stayed together for 5 years. There was no like sad parting or anything. We just all kind of took different creative directions. After that, we still keep in touch. We still share pages, but we don't meet monthly. One thing that I'll mention about that was I did learn that groups that meet at least bi-weekly worked a little bit better for me, not just for receiving my feedback and the speed of getting things through, but also so I could remember what people said about the last piece that I had turned in and keeping up with their stories as well, because typically you'll be exchanging pages to critique and work through. Actually, that critique group came together because I do the coffee hour for the local Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and we had enough people that came consistently that we ended up with a group of mostly middle grade fantasy writers, which works out really well for me. They have helped me to polish under and get a lot of my gratitude for being a part of getting this mentorship. So that's one of the ways that volunteering gives back. I also coach young writers with young Willamette writers, and that has been something that's helped me to be introduced to other writers and publishers locally. I also meet bi-weekly with a Horror Writers Association writers group and online with a Muslim writers group. So if you're watching and you're Muslim and you're a writer, you can let me know and I'll send that information to you. So 2023 was the first year that I had a story published. It is called Dead Man's Hand. It is a short story about nurses who have to play poker with a ghost. So speculative horror. And 2024, my second story called Keep Portland Quirky is a story about a boy who has yet to find his magic in a school for children with magic. This was a really fun project and the first time that I read aloud at a bookstore. And then last year, I contributed to Sanctuary is a Verb, which was a fundraiser for a domestic violence shelter. I sold a few other stories that will be out in 2026, and hopefully you'll hear good news about under this year as well. Why is this mentorship important to me? I don't really feel like I need to spend a lot of time on why we need diverse books. If you follow me on any of my other social medias at Nia Writing, NIYYAH Writing on Instagram or Facebook, I'm a little bit more active. You probably already know my stance. But some of the information and bullet points you find from their website are helpful to know. That when children have access to diverse libraries, they read more, in fact, like 4 hours more per week. Diverse stories deepen curiosity, they spark imagination. 99% of educators agree that having a diverse classroom library is important. I don't know what happened to the other 1%. It's like that one guy that only wants to read Calvin and Hobbes and The Hobbit and that's it. Or they just caught him before coffee, I don't know. For over 60 years, studies have shown that access to diverse libraries increases literacy rates, so it's a win-win for everyone. And for me, if you are Muslim, like less than 1% of stories that are out there apply to you. And there's also a disproportionate representation of people of color. So feeling like mine was very different. We were half adopted and there were a number of foster kids and we were multiracial and financially struggling. And I've had my own struggles with mental health and neurodivergence, which also always reflect in my stories. And these aren't stories that I found a lot of growing up or even now on the shelves. And sometimes I have felt that people that read these stories that don't identify with those issues, and not just my stories, but they will say that I don't find these stories believable or accessible, which can make someone who identifies with a marginalized narrative really feel unseen or misunderstood. And so having quality literature that's out there really helps to breed empathy and just make people see things through a different lens. Diverse stories really make me crave a world where I can find both people that live in the world like me, that people that move through the world very differently. It also grows my own curiosity and my own empathy, and it makes me just understand more about humans. The goal of this video series that I'll be doing this year, as I have my mentorship, is just how the mentorship is going, what is going on with my querying process if we get there, how I tackle the feedback that I get on my manuscript, because that is my next homework, is to send her the full manuscript. I'm just doing one final pass with some feedback that I really agreed with one of my beta readers. Thank you, Tim. And the initial goal is to have under traditionally published. I am definitely not opposed to self-publishing. I have a great network of editors and artists at my arsenal. I have a network with great artists and editors and layout people that can help me with a self-published adventure. But I really wanted to try and do it through an agent, just to see what it's like and to see if I could have somebody do that part of the process with me for the first novel go around. If you have any questions about this mentorship process or about my stages of hopefully publishing this manuscript or if you have completed a literary mentorship yourself, I would love to hear from you or answer any other questions you might have in the comments below. I have my socials, I think, in the little about video tab and then maybe on the YouTube page. But yeah, hit me up with what projects you're working on and your goals for this year if you've got any. Thanks for hanging in for this video, and I will see you next time.